Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Unsustainable Wednesdays. It is on a Wednesday. Again, this is what, 2 weeks in a row now?
Consistently Wednesday. Sustainably Wednesday, you could say.
Sustainably Wednesdays. That's what this is. So, a lot of players to talk about. This has been a wild week. I like... This last week was such a... I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but it felt like a complete blur. I ended up winning on the very last day by the skin of my teeth with a Pasternak hat trick and 2 Bergeron assists on that. Like, I don't know. These past few weeks have just felt so wild. I've won on the last day both of the past 2 weeks. It really feels like nothing I do matters. It's just kind of luck. Like, I'm just like, okay, hope my team does well. And, like, luckily I have a good enough team that pulls me through. But, like, every week it feels like... Is that just me?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
I mean, compared to most weeks anyway, with how bad COVID's been, like this week, I feel like it wasn't quite as bad. Except unless you had Dallas, and then you just got screwed. But
yeah, well... That's how it goes. So let's start off here and move right into Unsustainably High. And my first one, so the Minnesota Wild are finally back and playing hockey games. And the one who's benefited the most from this return has been Mats Zuccarello.
Yep.
My first one here on this list. He's increased in percentage and ownership percentage like 15%, I think, in the last day.
I picked him up, actually.
Did you really?
But in a 300-person league.
Okay, so in a deeper league.
Yeah, I picked him up before his first game back.
Is that in the Dynasty League?
Nope.
Oh, interesting. So 4 games played since he came back from injury. 6 points. Yeah, it's a 123-point pace. Everything's going right for him. 33% shooting right now over those 4 games. With not even like a crazy shot pace, 123 shot pace and shooting 33%, 85% IPP and 30% on ice shooting. Yeah, things are just going too well. I like Zuccarello. I love him. I think he could do good things, and he's only playing 15 minutes a game too, to boot. Nothing makes sense. Pick him up right now, but have the shortest of leashes with him, honestly.
Mm-hmm. I had him as well. I do like him in points leagues, but I think like his metrics obviously are crazy right now, and he needs to have more ice time than he's currently getting. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I picked him up in a 300-person league, and at that, I was like tiny bit surprised I was able to get him when I did, but also he's right around that value probably in a points league, despite how good a start has been. My first one here is Mark Scheifele. I'll put an asterisk here. Mm-hmm. It's like Mark Scheifele's only on this list because his point pace is like an insane 120, but his metrics aren't like super far off. His IPP is way too high. So last season he was at a 60% IPP, and that was still putting up above a point per game pace. This season he's sitting at a 90%. I think for his caliber of play, realistically, he should be somewhere in the 70 to 75%. That still puts him above point per game pace, most likely. So, and I think I hope that's what a lot of us thought going in on Scheifele, is that he's got one of the best shots in the game, and he's above a point per game pace, most likely, especially in that Northern Division. But he has a 25% shooting percentage, which actually isn't as far off of his season averages as you'd think, but still too high. And his IPP being as high as it is also a little crazy, but his power play point pace is right in line. So I think what we're going to wind up seeing is a little bit of a point dip, but not much else changing. He's still going to be a very good player and probably going to be worth more than where you paid for him in the draft.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think even this is wild. I know he's crazy right now, but Scheifele's in this weird territory where it might make sense to go see how much he costs in a trade, because I think that other owners might think, I might be selling high, when realistically, you're still getting a pretty good deal, probably. The thing I don't like so much about trading for Winnipeg players right now is that they've played a lot of games. So that's one thing I'm not super high on. But it is the Canadian division. They haven't had problems. So that's a big plus. Speaking of the Canadian division, My next one here is Brock Besser. Now, kind of an asterisk on Brock Besser as well. A lot has changed since last year in a way. His line mates are much better in the sense that it's all clicking, it's all working out. And the biggest area where he's seen an increase has been his shooting percentage. His shooting percentage went from 9.47 last year to 21% this year. Now, he's outperforming his expected goals by double. Last year, he was exactly on the dot for his expected goals. He scored 16. He was expected to score 16. This year, he has scored 12 so far, while being expected to score 7. So that's a big, big difference. So he's about double what he should be doing on the scoring front. But I do want to say that there's hope for him continuing like a point per game pace, essentially, because his IPP has skyrocketed. So last season, his IPP was 56%. This year, it's 71%. I don't think Brock Besser can't be a 71%, 70% IPP guy. Yep. I think that's reasonable, especially given the team, the players around him, right? His on-ice shooting percentage is the same, so that's all fine. So I think really what I would say Brock Besser is unsustainable in right now is goals. Everything else, honestly, it makes a lot of sense. I don't really see why Brock Besser could not be a point per game guy this year. But I do think that shooting needs to come down. Those goals need to come down. So maybe he doesn't end up point per game, but 75 points seems very, very reasonable. 75-point pace, seems very, very reasonable.
Yeah, I pretty much think every player in the Northern Division is going to be point per game at this point.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, it's kind of going exactly as we thought it would, and I'm kind of kicking myself for not leaning into my initial thoughts even more. I mean, we said pre-draft that like targeting offensive players from the North Division is probably a good idea, and then I feel like I didn't really follow through on that as much as I could have in my drafts, but
yeah,
whatever. Speaking of the Northern Division, my last one here, since you took Zuccarello, is Darnell Nurse. Now, there's a lot to like about Nurse in general, as there always is, because he's always going to put up those peripherals, which is the most likely the reason you got him in the first place, right? His hit pace is right along with usual. His block pace is still very high. His shot pace is everything's in line with what he always does. What's not in line is his insane point production. He's at 16 points in 20 games. That puts him on a 66-point pace. I feel like it's probably not too surprising to hear me say that I think that's unsustainable. But, yeah, I think it's unsustainable. I think part of the reason is that he's still kind of factoring in on a power play where he probably shouldn't be. I mean, he's seeing the same power play percentage he saw last season where he got 5 power play points. He's already at 4 in these 20 games, so he's trending well past that. And you can couple that with his insanely high on-ice shooting percentage, is at 14%. Now, I mean, he is playing on the Oilers in that Northern Division, so I think we're going to see a higher on-ice shooting percentage sort of across the board in that division with the weaknesses of the defense in general. But I think that his has gone up too far. In fact, I'm going to compare it to McDavid real quick. I actually have him on my sheet. He's got McDavid's on-ice shooting. So unless he's literally only on the ice when McDavid's on the ice, his on-ice shooting should be a little bit lower. I kind of believe, in fact, I definitely believe that McDavid's on-ice shooting is going to be high, much higher than average because of just how good he is. But that said, like Nurse's numbers aren't crazy, but I would kind of expect closer to what we saw last season, which is about a half a point per game. Like a 42-point pace across an 82-game season. That feels about right for Nurse. He feels like a good season for him is like 50 points. A bad season for him is like 35. So not the hugest range for a guy that you're getting for not points to begin with, most likely. So yeah, I mean, I think he's overproducing right now, but he's still exactly as good as why you got him. And his PIMs are just what a guy. What a guy with the PIMs.
What a guy. What a guy for peripherals leagues.
Yeah.
He is a monster. You
Truly.
just acquired him in Dynasty too, so
I did just acquire him in Dynasty. I traded.
That was a great trade for you.
Yeah, I acquired Fiala and Nurse, and I traded away Seth Jarvis, my 2020 first, which is likely to be a late in a 14-team league. Pavel Francouz and Nedeljkovic. Nedeljkovic. Why do I keep wanting to say
so
Nedel?
Hard for you? I don't
know. I can't put the emphasis
You always want to say Nedel.
Nedeljkovic. I want to say Nedeljkovic. I don't know. Anyway,
It's because you want to say Djokovic, so you're like saying
Yeah,
that last part like Djokovic and the first part like Nettle. You want to say Nettle Djokovic.
yeah, that's probably
So you're
right.
thinking of the tennis player.
Anyway, I don't have to worry about him anymore because I traded him. But
There you go.
and Adam Larson going the other way to kind of make up for Nurse. But yeah, I'm
You'll
pretty
do that
happy.
trade
It's actually
all day.
the third time in this league that I've traded for or away Nurse for some
weird.
reason in like 2 years. But
Yeah, you love and hate Nurse at the same time.
funny thing is, last time I traded Nurse to this GM to get Evander Kane, and then I traded back for Nurse later.
So dumb.
I got
you
pins
fleece
flying out of my
everybody.
butt.
That's a visual I definitely needed, especially especially if you're watching this on the YouTubes. Okay, my last one here for Unsustainably High is Nino Niederreiter on the Carolina Hurricanes. So on the season as a whole, through his 17 games played, on the season, he's a 58-point pace guy, which is an increase from last year. Last year, he was a 35-point pace guy. That makes sense given his minutes increase so far. He's seen about a minute increase, and it's substantial. It's all ridiculous. And it all comes from just these last 2 weeks, essentially. So if you look at these last 2 weeks, he's played 7 games and has 6 points. Through those 7 games, through his last 4 games, he has 4 points. So he's been point per game now just about for 7 games. And all of that comes with an 18% shooting. He was a 9% shooter last year. A ridiculous 15% on-ice shooting. It's all going to come down. It's all just his own shooting percentage on top of people around him scoring a ton of goals. And that should all kind of come down, especially given the deployment that he gets. He's not getting a lot of power play time. He only saw 35% of that power play percentage of his team's power play percentage over those last 7 games. So Nino Niederreiter is a good grab right now. Reminds me a little bit of Stahl. Good opportunity for now. Yeah, he's hot. But once he cools off, be ready to drop him real quick.
Yeah, I do like that line that's going on.
Yeah,
but,
same.
Yeah.
But not this much. I don't like it as much as it's currently going on. So it's more just kind of tempering expectations in a way.
Yeah. I've only got 2 for Unsustainably Low, but really I feel like I have 1 and in general, and that is the Montreal Canadiens kind of as a whole.
Interesting.
Stymied lately. I feel like a lot of questions have come in around guys like Petrie, Weber, Suzuki, Toffoli, pretty much everybody. And we're recording this Tuesday night, and of course, Weber has 2 goals. He's on my list here. I think Toffoli scored as well. So hopefully people are relaxing a little bit. But the first one I have here is actually Nick Suzuki. He has really slowed down. And actually, I'm pretty sure he didn't get in on anything, at least so far in this game. It may have ended by now. But last time I looked, it was 4-4. I'm pretty sure Suzuki was still goosenegging it. But Suzuki really, really broke out at the beginning of the season and then has kind of cooled off ever since. There's some problems with Suzuki, especially in Cats leagues. His hits are good, but his shots are bad. He's only like a 2-shot a game guy. That's not really quite as much as you'd like to see. Not even a 2-shot a game, actually. And because of that split power play, this is something that I was mentioning at the beginning of the season, and then just got ripped in half by every Habs fan about how every player on their team should be highly rosterable. Because of the split power play, there's always going to be a little bit of limited upside. That said, I do think Suzuki is arguably the best point getting forward, or just point getter period, probably. Maybe not this season, but I think he's got the most potential at least. And I think that we're going to see him be closer to what his season average is versus what his more short-term average has been. Over his last couple of weeks, he's on a 16-point pace. That's not good. But over the season, he's on like a 65-point pace. I think that's probably more reasonable. I don't really see anybody else on that team being able to be as consistent as Suzuki probably should be once he gets things going again. But I would like to see him shoot a little bit more.
So I actually have 2 Habs on Sustainably Low.
Oh boy, was Suzuki one of them?
No.
Was Weber one of them?
I kind of want to leave them now because they don't overlap, and I kind of want you to think about who could be on Sustainably Low.
Better not be Brendan Gallagher.
No. I would touch him because I know you'd kill me.
I would.
You'd kill me if I mentioned.
I got to trade for him in Dynasty next.
I actually do have an unsustainably low that you're going to like, though.
Do you?
My first one is Matthew Barzell.
Yeah. Okay.
He's shooting like a madman.
Yeah.
I mean, what has gotten into him these last 7 games? It's insane. He's on a 246 shot pace in these last 7 games. Over his last 4 games, 308 shot pace. And you know how many goals he has to show for that? 2. Only 2. When he should be having more than that. He is on the season outperforming his expected goals. His shooting is not the problem right now. That's not what's getting him into trouble. Over these last 7 games, 2 things stand out to me with Matthew Barzell that totally show me it's going to turn around. The shots is just a positive. It's one of those like, okay, if he's continuing to get this involved in the offense and shoot this much, that only means good things going forward. Secondly, his IPP is 50% over his last 7 games. He's a 75% IPP guy on the season. And over his last 4 games, he has 0. I mean, he has 0 points, so 0% IPP. The on-ice shooting percentage is down to about 8.5% over his last 14 games. And so you would expect a little bit better from the Isles. They're more of like a 9%, 9.5% on-ice shooting team around Matthew Barzell. So you would expect that to come up, and his IPP is super low. To me, he's someone that has this potential for a really, really good season. He's already on a 68-point pace with this slump, right? With this dip that he's on right now, he's still on a 68-point pace on the season. I think as a whole, we'll probably see Matthew Barzell be more of like a, 70, 75-point pace guy.
Yep.
I think that's kind of where I expect Matthew Barzell to go. But if these shots continue to come up, he's just adding value yet again to where he should be. So I'm high on Barzell. He's also doing well in the power play. His power play point pace right now is 18 on 82-game season versus 14 last season. So everything's kind of looking up there. So I guess I just kind of have to run through mine now because you've done all yours.
No, I didn't really mention Weber. I was going to go into a little bit more detail about him, so I can do him real quick.
Why not? Go through Weber.
Weber doesn't draw the exact same lines that Suzuki does. Weber's problems recently have not had anything to do with a lack of shooting. In fact, he's way up recently than he has been on the season. He hasn't been shooting nearly as much in general, but over the last 2 weeks, he's on a 246 shot pace. That gives you 3 a game. That's what you want to see. And 410 over the last couple of games. Again, this game going on tonight is not factored in, but he has 2 goals in that, so this is already turning around. He is the type to always outperform his expected goals for. It's just a model that doesn't like pinpoint defensemen. So I think that guys like Weber are always going to kind of be above it. He was above it last season. He's already above it this season. Wouldn't be surprised to see that continue, especially considering he has 2 goals. We know it's going to continue. But the interesting thing over the last 2 weeks is that he has a 0% on-ice shooting. In the last 2 weeks, that's 5 games played for him. No goals have gone in with him on the ice. None from anybody. So, I mean, that right there is the reason. For some reason, they just over this. I mean, you could tell that everybody's going to be on this list from the Habs, right? Because the last 5 games they've gotten like 0 goals, really. So that's it. I mean, there's not a whole lot else to it. I think the rest of his metrics. I don't like that his blocks and hits are down, but I think the rest of his metrics are pretty much what you'd expect from Weber. He still puts everything together. He is still going to get goals from a defenseman. He still plays half the power play like he always does. And the on-ice shooting is going to come back up. He's not going to be a 60-point defenseman, but you didn't draft him to be a 60-point defenseman. You probably drafted him to be a 45 to 50-point defenseman with good peripherals. I think that's what he's going to give you.
I just want to give a shout out real quick. I don't know why. I just want to do this to David Pastrnak.
Why?
He's already it's insane that he's already like top 20 in my league, and I got him in the 4th round. And for all of you people who got him that late, it's just, he is really, really helping you out. Anyways, my next 2 here. So my first one is going to be Max Pacioretty on the Vegas Golden Knights. Have a little bit of patience there. His shooting has come down a little bit, which is not a lot, but enough that I'm like, this is a little weird. So have his minutes a little bit. They've been kind of all over the place. Last game saw him play, I think, 16 and a half or something like that. I wouldn't look into it too much. But his power play point pace is down mostly because the Vegas Golden Knights power play is not that great at the moment. That hasn't been going so well for him. The other thing that has been low is his shooting percentage. Over his last 7 games, he has an 8% shooting. He's a 12% shooter. He's between 10 and 12 about. And with how much he shoots, I mean, a 2% difference there, it's a big deal. That's a lot of goals for him. And so I would definitely expect him to pick it up in that regard as long as those shots stay up. So I'd be patient. Like, why did you draft Pacioretty? You drafted him for the goals. You drafted him for the shots, right? And that's what he's going to continue to get you. And so I would be patient. And on top of that,
I think he is still leading the league in shots per game. I think.
Maybe. His shots per 60 is ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
insane. 14 shots per 60. It's nuts. The other thing that also is hurting him is his is on-ice shooting percentage. Sorry, his IPP has actually been fine. He's been fine from an IPP perspective over the last 7 games. He's at 50%, fine, because he's a 60-ish% guy. So 50%, cool. What's hurting him is that on-ice shooting percentage. The Vegas Golden Knights have just not scored goals while he's on the ice. 5% on-ice shooting percentage with that Vegas Golden Knights team is just atrocious. And if you go back to his last 11 games of his 16. 8% on-ice shooting. And so you can immediately start to point to what is going wrong with the Vegas Golden Knights right now, at least with Pacioretty, and it's solely that on-ice shooting percentage. They aren't scoring while Pacioretty's on the ice, and that's it on him. My next one here is going to be Evgeny Kuznetsov, just returning from COVID. He was dropped in my keeper league. I think he's going to be dropped probably in my points league. I don't know. People are definitely...
You got at least a point tonight. I don't know if you got anything else.
You got a point tonight. So I think people are being a little too quick here on Kuznetsov. One thing that he gives you that is hard to find is elite power play numbers. I mean, truly elite power play numbers. His current power play point pace is 27. Over the last 5 games, he's on a 33 power play point pace. Of course, he only has 2 over that span, but still, I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. His points have not been fantastic, but you can pretty much exclusively point to the fact that his on-ice shooting percentage has been dire. Over the last 5 games since he came back, a 7% shooting, on-ice shooting, compared to his 10% on the season and 13% last year. That's a huge decrease. That's like half. So I really would expect Kuznetsov to turn it around. I think this is a prime. I would pick him up if he were available. I'm thinking of picking him up. Just especially because at the very least, he gives you those really, really good power play numbers, which is really hard to find. It's really hard to find a power play specialist on the wire normally. So he at least gives you that. And I do think that we'll see him come back to kind of a 60-ish point pace, 65-ish point pace. But the thing is that normally a 60 to 65 point center, not super interesting. But with Kuznetsov, he gives you that in the form of power play points, which is extremely valuable. So something to consider. Now, last year he was only on a 16 power play point pace, so he does seem to be outperforming a little bit at the moment. So keep an eye on that. I'm not saying necessarily he's a long-term hold. Very well could be a drop, honestly, in 2 weeks. But he's kind of worth a gamble, especially as they seem to be moving things around a lot on that top line with around Ovechkin.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to Sustainably High. You can take...
Jacob Chikrin!
Oh, boy. Again?
Yeah.
Here we go.
So he's on
good?
here, and I was so ready to put him on Unsus High. Somebody said they hate it when we say that, when we shorten. I blame
Unsus?
Among Us, and I don't
Sus?
even play it.
Sus and unsus?
Even though it's totally different verbiage that
fair,
they're using there. But
Sus is okay. Sus is like common lexicon now.
no,
Although it's
people
not
use
really
it differently.
used the way we
they
use
say
it.
they use
Yeah,
sus
no.
for suspect, not for sustainable.
Oh, I know, but it's both for us.
It is.
It is both.
Anyway, the reason he's on here is because of the full-fledged terror around what would happen when OEL came back. Hasn't been that bad, turns out. Although his IPP is 100%, but I mean, we're only talking about a couple of games, so not too much to look into there. And it actually kind of the other side of that coin is that on-ice shooting has actually been very low. So you're looking at double what I would expect for his IPP, and about half of what the on-ice shooting should be. So that basically balances out. His IPPP currently is 56, which is a touch high. He's been a 37. He was on 37% last season. I actually think he's better than that. And a good defenseman gets about 50%. So seeing him in the 45 to 50 range, that makes sense to me. He's definitely benefiting from the power play more than anything. You can draw a straight line from where his additional points are coming from. It's literally just the power play. We'll see if that keeps up. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily on him or anything. I think it's just like the team as a whole is kind of figuring things out. Connor Garland is probably the easiest finger to point as far as where all this is coming from, and Dvorak as well. But I am high on him. I still don't think that you should expect Chychrun to be the 60-point pace he's on right now, right? Like that's not sustainable. But I think expecting 45 to 50 points from him, 45 probably. I think he's basically like a Darnell Nurse light kind of. He does a lot of the same things Darnell Nurse does, except like some percentage less. So he gets you a little bit less blocks, he gets you a little bit less hits, but he still does both of those things. Gets you a little bit less shots. Actually, I think he's on a higher shot pace right now, so that's nice. And a little bit less points. But considering you almost certainly got him from the waiver wire, that's a good get.
Yeah.
His PIMs have actually been high this season as well, relative to his norms.
Darnell Nurse Light.
Darnell Nurse Light.
There you go. My first one on Sustainably High is going to be the Minnesota goaltenders. It's Kaapo Kähkönen and Cam Talbot. So before the season came in, Dom especially was high on Cam Talbot and just the Minnesota defensive system, and especially being in that Western Division. And so far, they have lived up to the billing. So surprisingly, Cam Talbot, through 6 games played, has given up 0 low-danger goals against, which is actually shocking. That's pretty nuts. And he's faced a lot of low-danger shots against, 84. But he actually had a pretty good low-danger save percentage last year as well. He hasn't been great at high-danger save so far, but you can make up for that by being really, really good at low-danger. So Cam Talbot's been really good, and Kaapo Kähkönen is kind of exactly the same way. He's actually outperforming high danger at the moment while doing just as expected at mid-danger and low-danger save percentages. So he's just about where you'd expect. I think if I had to guess, I'd expect Cam Talbot to be the one that ends up being the better goaltender rest of season. Now, will he get the majority of starts? That's what I don't know. I think they probably go into more of a 1A, 1B, but I trust both of them. I trust both Talbot and Kähkönen. I think this year, Cam Talbot and Kaapo Kähkönen remind me of last year's Elvis Merzlikins and Korpisalo, where everyone was picking them up because they just kept doing well, and for whatever reason the system worked. That's what it reminds me of this season with both Kaapo Kähkönen and Cam Talbot, and I am high on both. I do think Talbot probably gets more starts than Kähkönen for the rest of the season, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they just straight split.
Yeah, I think it's going to be... straight splitting actually makes a lot of sense for them, considering how good Kähkönen has been out of the gate here.
Agreed.
All right, my next one is Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Long time coming, honestly.
Yeah, I think we've talked about... I don't know if we've even talked about him on the Unsustainable episode. We probably have, but I did allude to him in some other episode, I think, about how I think he actually might be underperforming despite the fact that he's doing quite well. And yeah, he was, turns out. I don't know that we can really say that this is completely the same thing, considering his last 2 games he's been on a 25% on-ice shooting, but playing on McDavid's line, man, that'll do a lot for you. I mean, we can realistically expect his on-ice shooting to be 13.5% or above, which is unbelievable on most players. That's the second biggest benefit that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has is he plays almost the entire power play. Last season, he played 92% of it. This season, he's at 83%, but still plenty. And we already know how well that power play does in that weak North Division, where he's on a 45-point pace on the power play, 45-point power play point pace. That's crazy. That's the difference. That's what's making Ryan Nugent-Hopkins go from a 6th round value to a 2nd or a 3rd at this point. The shots are up, actually. He's on a well above a 3-shot per game pace. His hits and everything else are basically in line with what you'd expect from him. And he does this all while sitting on a 50% IPP. So, I mean, I don't think he can improve on a 96-point pace, honestly. And I think that goes with the increased on-ice shooting. But, I mean, I don't think a 90-point pace rests away for him, or even a 95-point pace rests away for him, is crazy. I think it's actually pretty in line with what I'm seeing from his metrics. I don't think he does it in the form of goals the way he has been lately, but
that can easily just pivot, and he's still getting the same amount of points.
Right. Like, when you look at any goal scored in an Edmonton game lately, it's been some combination of Draisaitl, McDavid, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins on it.
Yeah.
With Barry or Nurse filling in the last point. It's like nobody else on that team gets points consistently. So they clearly like running the play through him. His increased in ice time is shown there. He plays almost 22 minutes a game. He's a beast.
Yeah. He is.
And I think I still think people are undervaluing him despite how good he is. So I would be targeting him if you can.
Yeah, I agree. I think you can get some. I haven't tried to target him yet. I think my league is a little sharp, and I doubt they'll bite for it. But I would try to see what you can maybe do.
I knocked on his door in Dynasty. I got pretty close to a deal, and then the guy traded him to somebody else, which I feel like always happens.
It does.
If you talk to a GM about a certain player, if you convince them that they will trade that player to you, I think the first thing that happens is they decide that player is now expendable, and they'll go shopping for some reason.
Yeah,
for alternate offers. It's a weird like dynamic from like a psychology perspective.
Yeah. Okay, my next one here, actually my next two are both people that I normally would not be recommending as sustainably high because they actually have very unsustainable numbers. So what I want to suggest here is not their current paces, but that they're still serviceable and you shouldn't get rid of them. So my first one is Sam Reinhart. He's been lights out now for a while, and you might laugh because it's the name Sam Reinhart. Over the last 8 games, he's point per game. The dude is ridiculous. He's shooting in 19%, but last year he shot 15%. So it's not that crazy. I mean, his expected goals for is 2.6, and he's at 4. So it's not that ridiculous. Now, what is kind of crazy is his IPP, which is at 89%. That should not stay. That should come down a little bit to around 70s. So a few reduction in points. So maybe like, 75-point pace? Something like that at the moment. What's really helping him more than anything, though, is the ridiculous Buffalo power play. I mean, Sam Reinhart at the moment is on a 44 power play point pace. Ridiculous. But what this all says to me pretty much, and especially the huge increase in minutes for him as of late, he's playing 22-ish minutes, 20 to 22 minutes a game. It's insane. To me, it just kind of points to, you know what, Sam Reinhart is the real deal to me. To me, it's, okay, I can hold on to this guy, and he's going to be consistently good, hopefully for the rest of the season. So I would have a much longer leash with Sam Reinhart when that dip, if it comes, where you got to pay attention to is mostly the power play. I think that's where when you see the Sabres in general dip, I think it'll come from that power play. But they seem to have maybe the best power play in the league, so I don't know if we'll see that dip, but I like Sam Reinhart a lot. I picked him up just as a streamer this week, but then I dug into it, and I was like, I actually kind of like him long term.
Yeah, I actually had a couple discussions with people about him, and I kind of came to the same conclusion that I think he's actually a longer term hold than I originally thought.
Same.
Even in cast leagues.
And that's why I'm putting him here, because I picked him up this week, and I'm imagining that a lot of people listening to this maybe did the same, or maybe we're thinking, okay, I'll hold him through this 5-game week, and then after that I'll dump. But the more I looked into it, I was like, I actually don't think I'm going to do that. I want to hold for a while here. He's a much better hold than I thought. So that's kind of why I wanted to talk about Sam Reinhart.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense, I think. My last one here is Kevin Fiala.
I missed out on picking him up in one of my leagues because I had used all my ads, and I went Monday morning, and he was gone.
Yeah. Somebody dropped him in one of the listener leagues, but I think he got scooped up immediately.
He did.
Fiala's shooting a lot. I don't know if you guys are paying attention to this, but he's on like a 4-shot a game pace now. I actually think he's going to keep it up. I mean, this is another situation where you can see an increase in ice time and an increase in responsibility is what's kind of leading to this. His IPP is just goofy. He's at 100% over the entire season essentially for him, which makes no sense. And that will relax a bit. But again, for him, for some reason, that has to couple with a weak on ice shooting percentage. Might have something to do with the fact that he's playing with like Victor Rask, and nobody should have to play with Victor Rask. But there we are. But I think what we're going to see is I think he's going to be a very good goal scoring forward, considering how much he's willing to shoot. I mean, he's got 6 goals in 12 games, which seems like a lot for him, but his expected goals for are basically 6. So he's right on. And I think that we're going to see some assists come in with that. I would like to see them go to more of a true top power play, but I don't see it happening. Although it should, really. I mean, look at the offensive. There's no guns in Minnesota. So I don't see why they don't put 75% of the power play time for Fiala and friends, right? Fiala, Kaprizov, and I guess that's it. I don't know. Who else do you put in there? Parise, I guess. Who knows? Some
Fiala
center?
and friends.
Nick Bonino? I don't know. 3 defensemen? I mean, that's all their offense comes from defense anyway. Put Dumba, Spurgeon. Have Spurgeon take the draws. We already know he can do everything in the game. And then put Dumba and Brodin in there. And then Fiala and Kaprizov. There you go. There's your power play 1. Yeah. I believe in Fiala the rest of the season and rest of career potentially, which is why I traded for him. Yeah. The funny thing is, he's 24, but I do remember us talking about him a year or 2 ago. People were really, really high on Fiala for a long time, and it's just kind of alarming to me how Nashville squandered him. Yeah. I don't know how he wasn't able to find any success there when Minnesota is not exactly an offensive team either. But
it seems like Nashville in general is just not a place forwards go to thrive.
Yeah, but it seems like although I guess we haven't seen a whole lot of top caliber forwards in Minnesota to really make any conclusions on that. But what would Arvidsson be doing if Arvidsson was the one that moved instead of Fiala? I wonder.
Weird. Anyways. My last one here is out of Carolina, actually. Vincent Trocheck. Mm-hmm. I feel like we've talked a lot about Vincent Trocheck, but we haven't talked about what to expect long-term from Vincent Trocheck. I think we've obviously said pick him up, which is quite obvious at this point. You're not going to pick him up anymore, probably. He's not available, most likely. But a lot of the questions that I've seen are, what do I do with Trocheck? Who is he? Am I supposed to trade him away? What's going on with him? Who is he? So to me, Vincent Trocheck and what you're seeing right now, for example, in 2 of my leagues, he's top 10. He's not a top 10 guy, in my opinion. He has the potential to be. He certainly has the capability to be a top 10 player, given his shot totals and his ability to put up points. But what's happening recently is a little insane. I mean, his shooting percentage is ridiculous. 20% shooting over the last 30 days. Come on, last 13 games. What I will say, though, which is actually kind of crazy, he has 7 goals. His expected goals for is 5. So he's not actually that terribly off his expected goals for, which is something very interesting because you would expect that a guy with 20% shooting to have a much higher difference between his expected goals for and his actual goals. And the fact that isn't higher is kind of, telling me, okay, maybe he could be like a 16% shooter on this team. Maybe they just set him up right, and give him the right opportunities. Right now, he does have a lot of secondary assists, which is one thing that is slightly-ish concerning. But his IPP is fine. His on-ice shooting percentage, fine. Which is crazy for a Carolina team, actually, because that Carolina team, you look at almost anybody else, and they have ridiculous on-ice shooting percentages. We talked about Niederreiter. So the fact that Vincent Trocheck's makes sense is actually really insane, and he's crushing it on the power play. I mean, the power play production is really what's driving him forward, and a lot of that shooting percentage bump is coming from the power play. He has a 40% shooting on the power play, so he's just been really good on the power play. I can absolutely see a scenario where Vincent Trocheck ends the season point per game.
Yep.
I don't know if I'd bet on it. I think I'd bet more on like 70 to 75. But I will say this. If I'm you, I'm not selling Vincent Trocheck outside of the highest bidder.
Yep.
I think he's found his groove. I don't see them taking him off of that top power play or his line. I think he's here to stay. And this is really exciting, honestly, after the last 2 seasons of me wanting Trocheck to break out so badly because we got that glimmer of who he could be, and then he just died. And now we're getting to see Trocheck of old, and I'm so excited.
Shall we move into Sustainably Low then?
Yep, time to talk about the bums.
I've got a bunch.
Oh boy, really?
Yep. I'm going to start with Nazem Kadri. Now, it's funny that I mentioned this because I just picked Kadri up. So I think I should preface that with he still does the things that you might need from him. If you grabbed him to be a banger guy with point upside, he still does that. He's still hitting a good amount. He's still shooting a good amount. The upside's clearly there. He's going to get power play points, if not a ton. But I think a lot of people went into this season looking at that division as an extremely weak division, which, it is, but it's not for the reasons that I think people were considering it that. There's a lot of stingy defensive teams. We'd already talked about Minnesota. You can look at Arizona. Of course, there's also Vegas and St. Louis. And even Anaheim at times can be, not lately, but they can be a little tough to score on as well. So that really only leaves you with San Jose and the Kings. And the Kings have been playing better lately, so I don't know. It's certainly not like the North where scoring just comes for everybody. But I think as a result, Kadri got kind of overrated to start the season. Not that people are drafting him super high or anything, but they're just expecting a little bit more than maybe you should be expecting. He actually is down at least a couple of goals expected, so he should get a couple more goals than he's got, but I wouldn't expect him to be on a whole lot more than like a 60-point pace. Right now he's on a 44-point pace, so I guess he's one of these guys that I could have put on Sustainably Low and been telling you the same things, but I think from the perspective of where I think people are thinking, I'm saying think too much, where I think people are viewing Kadri, I would call him Sustainably Low because I don't see him being like a 70-point guy. I feel like that's what people expected from him for some reason this season, and it's not going to happen, I don't think. I think the big reason is that he really doesn't get in on a lot on the power play, despite being power play 1 on such a good power play. He just doesn't. He didn't last season. He didn't this season. If he gets a 20 power play point pace, that's pretty good. And he has not done that last season, and he's not on that pace this season. So I'm not sure we're going to see it. So expect a 60-point guy with pretty good banger upside, and that's what you're going to get. Probably. Okay. Although anytime anybody's on Sustainably Low that's like on the fence like this, they blow up like tomorrow. So
I know it's happened every single episode so far this year. Pretty much, it feels like. Okay, so my first Sustainably Low guy here, I'm going to go with the blockbuster name. And I might get. I just don't know if I want to phrase this the way I'm about to phrase this. Whatever, I'm going to do it. Is Carey Price still elite? Because I don't know if he is. He had that one season. It was the 2018-2019 season where he had a 918 save percentage, played 66 games. But the year before that, he played 49 and had a 900. This last year, he was a 909, and this year he's sitting at an 893. He is he's just vastly underperforming the average at mid-danger save percentage. His low danger save percentage is also below average. High danger is the only thing he's doing right. He's allowed 7 more goals than expected. Last year, he allowed 24 more goals than expected. He has an easy job, too. It's really not his average shot distance is the same as last year, and it's farther away than the average. His average goal distance is farther than the average. I don't really have excuses for Carey Price, to be honest.
Connor McDavid, is that one?
Oh, well, that might be one. But he doesn't play Connor McDavid every night, does he? He just let in, 4 against the Ottawa Senators tonight?
Took the shootout loss, I think.
So
Brady Tkachuk, man. Elite pinpoint
4.
sniper Brady Tkachuk.
4 against the Montreal Canadiens. So, and the
the
thing is,
Senators?
look,
They are the
if I'm going to get killed for that one. But, I think that if this were an isolated year where like this happens, I wouldn't be thinking much of it. But the fact that this happened last year, where he underperformed, and the year before that last good year, he underperformed, and has this like one anomaly really good year since then. Not saying he wasn't good, he was phenomenal, but I mean, in these last few years, like, he is not the Carey Price of old. There was a good post the other day. I was reading something about the Canadian goaltenders. Who's going to be the Canadian goaltender come Olympics? I don't know if Price makes it. I mean, he's going to make it because he's Carey Price, but like, does he? Should he? I don't know. It's an interesting discussion, but that just kind of got me thinking to like, we're all valuing Price a little bit too much, I think, based on like who we think he should be versus who he's showing us that he is. And I think that when it comes to fantasy, a lot of times, what's difficult is that we need to remove ourselves from this idea of who we want a player to be or who we think they are, and kind of take at face value what they're showing us. And when it comes to Price, I think for the past while now, he's shown us he's just not as good as he once was, at least when it comes to fantasy. Real life discussion, how he moves and all of that, leave that aside. In fantasy, he just hasn't really been good. So sustainably low for me. He's 97% owned.
Yeah.
I would try to trade him away if I were you, honestly. Yeah.
My next one is Bo Horvat, who also got at least a point so far tonight. He actually runs extremely similarly to Kadri. Like, their numbers are frighteningly similar. Now that I'm looking at them closer, they are crazy. In the last 2 weeks, they have the exact same shot pace. They have Bo Horvat's last week hit pace is the same as Kadri's 2 weeks ago, and Kadri's last week hit pace is the same as Horvat's 2 weeks ago. They're both, in the 150 area, and they both have the same hit pace on the season of 82, which is just strange. They play essentially the same amount on the power play, time and percentage. They have essentially the same power play point pace. They have essentially the same IPP and the same on-ice shooting, roughly. Actually, the on-ice shooting is a little bit different in Horvat's favor, but they're pretty similar. But I would give Horvat a bit of a bump. I do think that his line mates at even strength are stronger, and that's going to make the difference. And I think he's going to get in on a little bit more, even though it doesn't suggest the numbers don't suggest as much. But I do think that he'll get in a little bit more on the power play because of that weaker Northern Division. So I think that I like Horvat a little bit more than Kadri, but I also think that you can't really expect a 70-point plus pace out of him rest of the season. He had a 63-point pace last season. I get that division's weaker, but hasn't really benefited him all that much as of late, at least. And I think that he's still fine. I mean, I have him in a handful of rosters. I'm not really looking to drop him or anything, but I'm also not expecting a breakout season from him or anything.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing I wanted to just go back to really quick that I thought of while you were talking on Price was the fact that, like, I feel like for the past few years we've been told, the reason Price struggles is because he plays so many games. So then went out and got Allen, and now he's split starting. So you're not being overworked. So what's going on? Anyways, I think I'm going to get flamed for that one, but I'll stand by it. I will stand. But when he gets 2 shutouts in a row, you just know that the Suslow curse is real. Okay, yep. I'm going to stick with this goalie theme really quick and just go to Braden Holtby. I am so low on Braden Holtby. I couldn't be lower. The fact that he's like 58% owned is nuts to me. You could safely drop Braden Holtby. I'm not even going to go into why. Just go look at his stats. Watch him play. He's not the Braden Holtby of old. And Vancouver can't play defense to save their lives, even though right now they're up 3-0 on Edmonton while recording this. But, it's Vancouver. This could, in the next 3 minutes, this could become 4-3 Edmonton, and I wouldn't even be shocked with the way Vancouver plays defense.
Yep. All right. My next one is Dougie Hamilton.
Wow.
It's all red.
Wow.
His entire chart is red.
Wow. To be fair, though, I mean, his pace from last year is before he got injured. So, is it?
Yeah.
Wow. I did not expect this.
Wait. It's not. I'm not super scared on Hamilton. I'm just not.
You're putting him on sus low.
I am, because I feel like, as a lot of us was kind of viewing last season as a floor for Hamilton. Last season he was on a 70-point pace. All his numbers looked pretty good. His IPP was exactly 50%, which is what you want. His on-ice shooting was 11%. That's fine. His power play point pace is only 23. That's not crazy. So, and his shots were high, which is what you want to see from a defenseman. All those things, that's a Brent Burns style, like Brent Burns of 3 years ago style, chart. That's this could be a point per game defenseman. He's on a good team, He's got plenty of firepower in front of him. He's finally getting top power play, permanently, probably. But I think that, I don't know. Maybe we just jumped the gun a little bit.
I guess what's your suggestion on Dougie Hamilton then?
Oh, I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't sell or buy, probably. It's just
why is he on sus low?
Why is he on sus low? Because his time on ice is down, his points are down, his shooting's down, his IPP is down, his time on ice on the power play is down. That's why.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, everything is just
recalibrate, I guess.
Yeah, the biggest concern I have, I don't know what my biggest concern is. I would have liked. He has a higher power play point pace this season than he did last season, but I don't understand why he's only playing 61, 62%. Actually, I do, because they have turbo and power play 2, and now they have 2 units, and that's just bad news, and nobody expected that. I didn't expect that, and I think that kind of screws everything up. And we talked about it a little bit, tiny bit, about how great news that they have 2 working power play units, but it's sort of bad news for almost everybody on the team, because now you can't rely on that top power play, which we expected to be, Aho, Svetch, Turbo, somebody I'm forgetting, and Hamilton.
I mean, Hamilton's power play point pace, though, right now is above last year's.
That's what I'm saying. It is above last year's, and that's good, but it should be higher than that if he was playing 75% like he was last season. So he's still being capped in a way.
Here's what I would say. I agree with you to not sell. I would say be careful buying, I think. Because with the deadline approaching, Dougie Hamilton looks like a great buy low candidate, which in a way he is. But don't be paying like Victor Hedman prices or, a 70-point player price. Don't do that. Don't pay Petrie prices. Don't do that. You want to adjust and assume, I think he's more of like a 45 to 50-point defenseman. I think.
I think he's higher than that. I think he can be 55 to 60.
If you want to play super safe, you're putting him on sus low, sir. You're the one putting him here. So
because I said I came into the season thinking last season was a floor. He was on a 70-point pace last season.
You thought 70 was okay. I never thought that. I thought 55, 60 was a floor.
Oh,
you're out of your mind.
I mean, maybe not a floor, but I expected 70 points from him.
Okay.
And now I expect 60 points from him. It's a pretty big drop.
Okay. I think 50 to 55 is where I'll go. I think between 50 to 55 is fine.
Well, that's where he is now. So then he is sus low.
Exactly. So he's sus. I think he's just sus what he is. But that's why I'm saying
but that makes him low compared to what most people expected from him. You don't draft him in the 3rd or 4th round expecting a 55 to 60-point guy or 50 to 55-point guy.
True. But then that's where also Yossi ended up.
I know.
And where Hedman ended up. No, Hedman's actually...
not Hedman
is on.
But yeah, that is... I mean, I feel like maybe I should go back to the old days where I never drafted defensemen early, but
Yeah, that's certainly what it's starting to feel like.
you just never know. But
I mean, I've been running 2 defensemen in my points league this year, and it's working.
yeah,
It's just pointless. I mean, the best defenseman in my points league is, I think, what is he on a ranking standpoint? He's like 100. Hedman, he's like 120th in a points league. It's like, why? What's the point? And he ends up going in the 4th round. It's nuts. Anyways, my last one here for Suslow is going to be another Montreal Canadian, Tomas Tatar. Minutes have just crumbled. He is getting no minutes recently. Over his last 10 games, he's only playing 14 and a half minutes. Over his last 4 games, 13. And the last 2, 11. It is not pretty. His shots on goal pace has plummeted. Everything is bad. Everything is just... it could not be worse for Tatar. You are safe to drop. That's it. He is as Suslow as you get.
All right. My next one is another big name that's going to make people mad.
Boy.
Jack
So
Eichel.
this is what? This is what you feel like. This is what it feels like to be on the... Okay. This is what it feels like being on the other side. I get it now. I get it. I understand the faces you make at me. It all makes sense. Okay.
I
go.
didn't say Will
Do your
Butcher, to
thing.
be fair, but
Will Butcher was a suggestion.
he was a
Different.
crazy... Didn't you call him Sus High or something crazy?
He's still...
Oh,
No,
you mean it was a pickup suggestion.
It was a pickup suggestion. And by the way, he got scratched, but he is still point per game. Just saying. Anyways, Eichel. What? Go. Continue.
So Eichel, we saw people, Eichel was in question. I actually heard of him being drafted over Matthews, which is insane. But when you talk about what you expected of him, we're 6 weeks in, basically halfway through the regular season of fantasy hockey. He's on a 71-point pace. It's not terrible, but I think a lot of people drafted him expecting last season again, right? 95-point pace. He's got Taylor Hall now. It could be even higher. I saw a lot of people thinking that he's going to break 100-point pace. I think this once again kind of points to the divisions. Like that division is it is the hardest to score in of any of the divisions. It's even the Devils, with Blackwood and net. The only team that is like somewhat easy to score on is the Rangers, probably. Everybody else is pretty stingy. So
The Rangers are stingy.
So that all adds up to Eichel. Like no matter how well he plays, there's only so much he can do. I think. But I mean, you can also look at some of the other things that are going on with him. The thing that worries me the most is that last season he was on a 12.5% on ice shooting, which is like as much as I like Eichel, I don't know that he has the line mates to back that up, especially if he's not playing with Hall. He's playing with Reinhart and actually who's on left wing? It's not Olofsson. Who is left winging him right now? I'm blanking. I'm gonna take a quick look. I'm gonna cheat because I just don't know. Let's see. Oh, it is Olofsson again. Okay, so I mean that helps, but I don't think that his wingers, as good as they are not good enough to back up a 12.5%. Like Eichel's not McDavid. He can't do everything himself. So I guess there was indicators that we could have been following here to see a dip in production, both with the division and with his on-ice shooting being as high as it was. Everything besides that is basically in line. He's on a much higher power play point pace than he was last season, yet his point pace is lower. He's due a goal or two, but and I think he picked up a point or two this season, but
A goal or two
tonight.
He's shooting at 4% on the season.
Yeah. His expected goals for is only 4. He's already got 2.
I mean,
so
yeah,
he's not
but
taking
he's
high danger shots or anything.
Yeah, but I mean, he's a higher percentage shooter than 4, much higher.
I don't know if he's a 15% though, like he was last season.
I mean, even if he's not, if
he's a 10% shooter, then he should have 3 more goals. So that puts him at point per game or so, which is about what I expect. I just don't expect the 95-point pace that we had last season.
I don't know. I got to disagree with you on this one. I would be buying low on Eichel right now.
It depends on what you consider buying low for him, but
I'd be buying low on Eichel. I mean, I think you can get Eichel for a pretty decent price.
why?
Why? Because look at him. He's terrible. He looks terrible. He looks awful. I mean, he is the absolute definition of going somewhere and saying, "This guy looks bad. I want to get him."
Who says
Like everything. He's the definition of it. Over his last 5 games, he has 33 points. Plus, there's a bunch of blanks because Buffalo missed a bunch of games. So Yahoo's doing this stupid thing where there's like games above the fold, some below.
Oh, you mean
it
like
makes
trying to
no
snipe him from
sense.
somebody who doesn't know better?
Well, no, not even doesn't know better. But I mean, look at his last 10 games. He's on a 57-point pace over his last 10 games, 6% shooting. Like the only thing he's got.
Would you
going
trade him for
him-
Stamkos?
Like, would I do Stamkos for Eichel?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like
But I would.
preseason
I think
I would have done that, and now I wouldn't.
Preseason, I would have. I agree with that. But I think now, like,
But why?
I
It's because your opinion has changed on him. You are lower on him sustainably than you were before the season started.
No, because I never. To be fair, I never. Okay, I did expect Eichel to be better than Stamkos, but that was wrong. Although I was high on Stamkos, we both were.
We were, yeah.
I'm trying to think.
I'm kind of twisting the knife a little bit on this one.
You are
but yeah.
you are absolutely twisting the knife. Spicy, man. I don't know about that. I disagree. I think I would Trocheck for Eichel would be a good one. I would do Trocheck. I actually would not. I'm higher on Trocheck than Eichel.
What?
This is when you know the episode needs to end. We have Carey Price and Suslow, Eichel Suslow, Dougie Hamilton Suslow.
It's all relative, though. I'm not saying
it
you guys
is.
are bad players. I'm just saying
This is-
compared to
this
what
is
we
why
expected.
This is why
I have
we
one
get
more,
flames.
which is going to make people
my
mad
God.
too, probably. Although I don't think you would be mad about this one as an individual. I think you'll probably agree with me. But
Here I thought the bleeding was going to stop. Okay.
Alex
Everyone's
Pietrangelo.
gonna- Here we go. Everyone's going to unsubscribe. Like,
No, they're not. They're going to enjoy my takes forever until they die. Pietrangelo. So this was, I was a little skeptical on Pietrangelo coming into the season. I was pretty vocal about being skeptical on Pietrangelo coming into the season. Very vocal, in fact. But it's kind of come to fruition more than I even expected. Now, he was on a 61-point pace last season. I expect him to be like a 45, 50-point guy. He's sitting right now at 38 points. I actually think my preseason prediction's probably about right of 45 to 50-point pace, but that's still way lower than people were expecting for him. And I mean, I think that's just what it is. Like, he will be fine, but he doesn't have that power play 1 production that he had in St. Louis. He's not going to be 80% on the power play like he was that season, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Even with Theodore out, he wasn't really pulling those kinds of numbers. He was pulling higher than he was. He was getting 60% or so with Theodore out, but I think it's Theodore's show from the offensive side of things. I know Pietrangelo is amazing. Pietrangelo and Theodore are actually very similar players. Theodore's not a bad defensive player. I feel like people kind of gloss over the fact just because of how much he's broken out offensively, but he's a pretty good defensive player as well. They take cues from each other in a way. Well, one from the other, I guess, really, but he's still a great blocker. Pietrangelo, he must be close to the top of the league in block pace for a player that you'd have for anything but just blocks. So obviously he's not like a drop cannon or anything. His shots are great. His blocks are great. His hits are not great, but not non-existent either. But I think if you came into this thinking you're going to get an improved even Pietrangelo than the previous season coming into Vegas, I think reality should be setting in by now.
Yeah, I agree. That one, honestly, I don't fully disagree with that. I like that one.
Yeah. I mean, he still provides so much value. Like, even if he's not going to get you 60, 70 points.
Like, especially
if he gets you 50, if he gets you 45 to 50 points, but with those shots and blocks, like, man, he's still very good.
I just don't. I don't think he gets you that. I think he's like I could see him being more like a 35, 40 point guy.
I think he'll do better than that. I think.
I don't know. I just don't see it with Theodore. If Theodore is killing it, I just don't see where Pietrangelo kind of puts the dink in the armor. Huh? Huh?
I'll put it at a 45 to 50 point pace. That'd be my guess.
I'm going to go way lower than that. I actually have one more.
Okay.
Late edition, because One, I want people who are tuning into this spicy episode to get some goodness if they're staying till the end. So you remember a few episodes ago, you very angrily yelled at me. I just want to bring this up. You yelled at me, chastised me on a certain player that you said there's no way they go below like 50 points. Do you remember who that player was?
I'm sure it's Brent Burns.
It is Brent Burns. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am coming back to Brent Burns. 39-point pace on the season. It's even worse if you look at his last 12 games, which is 34. You look at his last 7 games, 23. Last 3 games, 27. Mm-hmm. It is bad. It is bad news bears. What is the thing that is hurting Burns the most? It's not his on-ice shooting percentage. It's actually pretty much in line. What's hurting him is his IPP. For whatever reason, this season, he's completely dipped on his IPP. On the season as a whole. Last year, he was a 51% IPP
and power
guy.
Play,
yeah, and this year, he's a 38% IPP guy. So what is it happening? What is happening to Brent Burns? I think maybe just age. Maybe a change in the way that San Jose plays that just isn't allowing Burns to get in on the points as much anymore. Part of it might be that he can't. He can't keep up as much now. I haven't watched many Shark games because, quite frankly, I can't stay up on the East Coast for Sharks games, and also it's a Sharks game. If I was staying up to watch a 10 p.m. game, I'd be watching the Canucks get blown out, or them blowing someone out and then proceeding to get blown out right after. But anyways, Brent Burns, sus low. I can't believe how low he is, and his shots are down too. I love how silent Brandon's been for the most part throughout this. Man, love.
He's still a player I'm going to go down with a ship with, but
oh, of course you are. I know this is your Bob, and I love it. I completely love it. I would ship him for pennies at this point. I'm so low on the Sharks in general.
I'm gonna go right back through the listener leagues and send out trade requests for Burns.
God, so petty. The day after we have that argument, Brandon goes out and sends trade requests to every single Brent Burns owner.
I was hoping somebody would listen to you, but none of them did. Everybody rejected my offers. Although I don't know how bad they were, honestly. I could have just been sending really bad offers. I really don't remember if they were in line or not.
This is what you get for everyone listening to you. See? Those kinds of things don't work out.
The funny thing is,
once I was right.
With Burns, there's 2 things about Burns. I'm not going to defend my points here because I think you may be right that he is sustainably low. But I'm just trying to make heads or tails of what's going on because he's actually seeing it like significantly increased ice time, and I'm wondering if he's like fatigued. Like he's old, and they're playing him nearly 30 minutes a game. I don't know. I don't know how sustainable that is.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing too. Is like I was saying, I think maybe he's playing. Well, here's the other thing too that's very different is the Sharks used to control play a little bit more. And so when you look at his offensive zone start percentage, last year it was 54%. This year it's 49%. So if you're Burns and you're on the defense, how are the Sharks scoring goals this year, right? When you're on the back end of it, you're countering all the time. And so it's not setting up in the offensive zone, having the defenseman cycle around as much. It's much more of get the forwards up, get the forwards forward. Like that one. Get the forwards up there, and then, have them play amongst themselves in a way. And I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I can't completely tell you, but what I can tell you is that I'm very low on Burns. And for whatever reason, I think that it's gone on long enough now that we can assume, that IPP is staying low. And Burns is just not going to be the player he was.
I don't know if we could say it's gone on long enough to say the IPP staying low, but
it's getting worse. It's not just about it. Over the last 12 games, it's 35. Over the last 7 games, it's 25. Over the last 3 games, it's 25. And on the season, it's 38. It just keeps getting worse.
It's been a bad month.
It's been brutal. Well, anyways, this show has gone on long enough. We are over an hour long. But to those who stayed and stuck it through, you got, I think, a pretty good episode, I would say. So, keep using those cat emojis, and we will catch you for the weekend preview. I'm going to go sleep now. Dream of how right I was about Burns. Oh, no. Okay. Well, thank you for listening. Catch you next time.
Yep. Thanks for listening.